Well, everyone, if you're still wondering why Tencent are moving more and more into the West with opening studios, making investments, acquisitions, things like that, here is yet another example of just why it is absolutely in their financial interest to do so. Chinese government bars Tencent from updating or launching apps in China. Now, suffice to say, China's a fairly big market for Tencent. So as for what's happening here, the Chinese government has suspended Tencent's ability to release new apps or update existing ones. The Ministry of Industry and Information Technology have directed the relevant platforms and app marketplaces to implement a suspension order against Tencent's apps. They have not released any formal details on the suspension, nor have they indicated how long it may last. This is not good. This is not good for them. As to the why here, well, the suspension measure is a part of temporary administrative guidance against Tencent. The MIIT will use temporary technology testing to ensure Tencent's apps are up to their own nebulous standards, whatever they may be. Now, according to Daniel Ahmad, the measure only applies to mainland China, and it derives from the state regulator's recent discovery that some apps are actually violating rules on users' rights and data protection. 9 apps were named on the big list of shame, and China's state broadcaster, again, basically, if you're looking at the various different sort of state newspapers, state, broadcasters, if the government doesn't say something officially, but the state-owned media does, then often that kind of is what the state's opinion is. So the state broadcaster criticized Tencent for going against the industry's corrective winds. Don't be going against the winds. Nope. And this is also part of an ongoing campaign launched by the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology last year to ensure that all apps follow relevant data privacy and cybersecurity regulations about gathering data from their users. And in a statement that was released following the implementation of the suspension last week, Tencent said that they are maintaining regular cooperation with the relevant government agencies to ensure regulatory compliance, and they've also emphasized that the current apps are still functional and can be downloaded throughout the suspension order. It's just, publishing apps and updating them that they're not allowed to do. Whew, that was rattling through the news.
Brutal.
So that's obviously going to be a big suck from them. It's going to rattle investor confidence in the company as well. Any regulatory pressure that would decrease their monetization potential will obviously be rough for them. The other side of this, of course, is users, especially underage users, younger users, policing their amount of playtime. Sure, that might not be the most high conversion users in terms of monetization, but what happens in a few years when those minors grow up, still have a phone, are still playing Honor of Kings or whatever, and, they haven't been trained in the way of doing those microtransactions, or maybe they haven't been able to play as much of those games, which means they don't have a gaming habit on a Tencent game. Those are the things that long-term are not going to be particularly great for Tencent, and I think certainly when you see that the overall regulatory landscape is getting tighter and tighter, then, if you're Tencent, you're like, all right, well, we can still make a lot of money in this domestic market, but there are less of these restrictions elsewhere, or these restrictions are not as policed elsewhere. Because I think the thing is, the government can very much just decide this is the thing we want to do. Okay, we've done it. We're going to do it now. Whereas in some other parts of the world, there's more processes. I believe anyway, there's just sort of more to muscle your way through, and probably corporate lobbying and things like that is more powerful. Every different country's system obviously has got all of their own forms of corruption. But, maybe that's the case. They just see the West to be a market that's a little bit less. Plus, also, it's a very diverse market. It's so many different countries. Yeah. It's like, oh no, FIFA loot boxes aren't really a thing in Belgium.
Anyway.
Oh no! Whereas these loot boxes aren't a thing in China is obviously far larger than Belgium.
Our money's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for a bit of context, like their stock peaked at just under $100 in February this year, and now it's as of today, it's at $59. That's down 22% this year to date. So that's pretty much, you can see the actual impact of all this regulatory stuff hitting them specifically in July. It's like, oh yeah, they are definitely feeling the squeeze on this.
Yeah,
which obviously explains why they're going to do everything else to counteract this as a business.
Yeah, and this has been happening, it's been happening, right? Because back in September, both Tencent and NetEase they were hit by a government decision to slow down the approval process for new games. So, I mean, imagine you're a big company, you've got a big release coming up, and, just one day Boris gets up and says, you can't release games for a bit.
You're like, what?
Like, what? Of course, that led to the stock going down. Obviously investors getting a little bit spooked there. As for the state opinion on it, though, a lot of talk about the solitary focus on profit, arguing that a sole focus on money could lead to games companies creating mechanics to promote addiction in minors. And in fairness, we're not going to say that's not true.
Yeah, that's literally possibly true. Yeah.
Electronic Arts, FIFA Ultimate Team. Xinhua News Agency, which is Chinese state media, said the authorities ordered the enterprises and platforms to tighten examinations of the contents of their games. Obscene and violent content and those breeding unhealthy tendencies such as money worship and effeminacy should be removed. So, there you go. If it is not promoting you being a good wolf warrior, then I think it's not exactly the sort of thing they want to have going on. So no soft boys.
Yeah, well, at least we know what the official Chinese government Christmas movie is then. Die Hard, of course.
Obviously, that's it. Yeah, and of course, the Xinhua also published the Economic Information Daily, which is the one that called gaming spiritual opium.
Which the Telegraph then just said, yeah, you're right.
Which is quite funny. And of course, opium is something that will be, I suppose there's maybe a bit now out of American context. They have an opium crisis. But very much opium was, I guess, a dark time
very dark
in Chinese history. As for the ramifications here on gaming, well, it does basically mean that Tencent are going to have an incentive to move into the Western markets more. There's likes of Lightspeed LA that they've set up. They currently publish more than 100 mobile games in China and over 70 more general apps. So China is a humongous part of their revenue. They will want to be getting more international revenue.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they try to muscle in Western with a lot of their general stuff. Because obviously they've been focused on building up games, but I guess I wonder is, when are they going to make a move into Western payment processing and stuff like that on a larger scale, as opposed to, because if updates on that cause it to actually function go down, if one of their apps that handles money stuff, then they've just lost, a transfer fee of so much of the money going in and around China.
Yeah.
Which, obviously, fair enough that if the point is you need to be going by the law in terms of data prevention, stuff like that, because there's definitely a part of people in the West going, it'd be very nice if the government could step up to Facebook and, issue challenges like this, which is kind of where you do go, okay, well, yeah, there is basically seemingly evil everywhere, and now people are just kind of going, well, which one's winning where?
Yeah.
Oh man.
And the other thing I'd say here, so just to go over some of these, this is only the most recent attempt to kind of curb some of these companies. Other ones include 3 hours of gaming time per week for under 18s. I mean, me when I was 17, I couldn't deal with that shit.
3 hours of gaming time per hour for us,
Yeah. 1 hour per day across Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Real name verification, facial recognition technology, monthly spending cap for under 18s, no live streaming for under 16s. The list goes on, and here's where I'm going to bring in Riot. Mm-hmm. Because where Riot have found success is in broad cultural engagement in their brand, in their IP. Just the amount of time that your brain is thinking about a Riot thing. Mm-hmm. Obviously quite funny considering who owns Riot. But for all of these other Tencent properties, all of these decrease total time spent on brand. Yeah. Decreases their mind share in who are going to be tomorrow's high revenue customers. And I think that's why you see some of the worry in the stock. But basically, there you go. It's always fun to hop over and see what's going on. It's, just the games industry as it is expressed in different countries is a very bloody interesting thing.
Definitely.
And certainly the ramifications here may not be super directly felt to us in the now, but I think in the soon they will be.
Yeah, to me, this comes across as, because this isn't just games, this is apps. I am really wondering, well, Tencent will start to try and get their non-gaming market over here, I imagine. And that's the one thing that obviously not really hyper applicable to games, but in terms of wider cultural stuff, you could certainly see it happening very soon.
Yeah, exactly. Like I remember it was WeChat's NetEase, right?
I believe so.
Because I remember his Linus Tech Tip video I was watching. And he was just casually talking about WeChat. I'm like, oh yeah, that's interesting. Because here WeChat's not used really by anyone. But it does seem that over, where Linus is.
Oh no, WeChat is
in Canada. Is it?
WeChat is Tencent.
It is Tencent, right? But it seems like WeChat's actually pretty big and regularly used over there.
Yeah, I believe an awful lot of that is, and I forget the term for groups of people who move, but apparently a lot of that is the Chinese population there, who are keeping in touch with family in China, or moving over and keeping their applications, and that stuff's pushing there a little bit.
Yeah.
So not as much of that elsewhere, but you could certainly see it crop up.
And I suppose just the thing there, like if you actually look at the feature set of WeChat and what like your, sort of smoothness of your overall experience is like, it's really smooth. Like the way they can do everything on WeChat over there.
Yeah.
Which certainly an interest, sort of beyond scope of this channel, really. But it is interesting.
Yep.
So to speak. Anyway, that's it. That's it for us. What do you think's going on here? And what is your opinion? Do let us know. And with that said, see you next time.